What's doing, everybody? Welcome to First Class Fatherhood. I'm Alec, and before I hit you with today's interview, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the link in the description so you can listen to all of the interviews I've done with so many tremendous dads, including Dana White, Deion Sanders, Tony Hawk, and so many others. Now let's get going with today's interview. Joining me now, First Class Father Spencer Matthews. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you very much, sir. Very happy to be here.
All right, happy to have you here. Let's start it like this. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
I have one kid. He's 18 months old, and we have a second, our little daughter, joining us in July.
Wow.
So we like to move fast.
Wow, congratulations on that. Now, did you guys do any kind of like a gender reveal to find out what you were having, or did you guys just you find out when you were at the doctor's office? How'd you do that?
Oh no, mate! If there's free information going around, I'll take it. We were keen to find out. We're too impatient. Like, there's no way we'd wait 9 months or 10 months, actually, as it turns out, to find out the sex. We were keen to know the first time around, so we found out after 10 weeks. We had something called a harmony test done. I don't know what it's like over there in the States, but you can have a test that reveals the child's kind of health and gender from about 10 weeks here in the UK. So we've done that for both, and we have a young boy, as I'm sure you can hear, and a young girl joining us.
Yeah, very cool. All right, Spencer, if you could just take a minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
My name's Spencer Matthews. I was born in the English countryside, but was raised in the French West Indies. I have worked across a number of different sectors. I worked in finance for a while as a forward foreign exchange trader and broker of the Swiss franc. And then I suppose most people know me here in the UK from a television show called Made in Chelsea, which is basically, it's very similar to Adam DeVello's Hills. Back when the Hills was very popular over in the States. I, in fact, spent a bit of time with a few of the cast members out there whilst I was at USC, and came back here and thought, this kind of stuff doesn't exist over here. I've always been one for like an unsaturated market, if you will. I've always been interested in doing things that, you know, are a bit different and stand out. Reality TV was not a big genre back in the day over here. So we made a fair amount of that, and I went on to do fair amount of other shows. I was the UK Bachelor. I gather that's a big show in the States. We don't have to marry the girl at the end. And I was a finalist in MasterChef and won a show called The Jump, which is about ski jumping. A very competitive guy. And now have a couple of businesses. One is Eden Rocks Diamonds. We make engagement rings, bespoke engagement rings. And the other, which is probably more personal and close to my heart, is the Clean Liquor Company, where we make ultra low and no alcohol liquors. Currently gin and rum with flavored vodka, tequila, and whiskey on the way.
Yeah, you've had an incredible ride here, Spencer. We're going to touch on your Clean Liquor Company in just a minute here, but you've had all these wild experiences in your life. How did the experience of becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
I think by the time I became a father, I was very keen on growing up anyway. But obviously it puts, you no longer put yourself first, I suppose. If in your 20s you were a bit hedonistic like I was, and you know, selfish is the wrong word, but, you know, had your own interest at heart, say more than others. It's nice to care about somebody more than you care about yourself. And I kind of had that with my best friend and wife, Vogue. It was the first real time in my life that I put other people first, I suppose, which sounds bad, but I'm just being honest. So no, it was, but it's a really exciting time, and I mean, especially for the father when they're about this age. You said you had 4 kids?
4, yep.
Yeah, so Theodore was 18 months, going on 19 months in a few days, and he's a proper age now where you can have a load of fun with him as a father. You know, I think the early days, you kind of question. Well, I certainly was questioning. I was like, you know, wow, does it? Where is this feeling that everyone talks about? You know, how it's, you know, the most amazing thing and the most, you know, you feel this love, and of course you love your kid, but it's really apparent now. Like now, he wakes me up at 5 a.m, I don't even care. Like, I'm keen to get up with him. Whereas, I suppose when he was a bit slower and smaller, it was less exciting and entertaining, I suppose, being a father. And like, he's at that stage where he's like a little sponge now. Like I can say words to him and he'll repeat them, like a little parrot. So his vocabulary is kind of, growing by the day. And he's fine. He's good fun. His vocabulary is kind of growing by the day, and he's learning new words and new tricks. And you can kind of really begin to understand their intelligence at this age as well. I'm not saying he's going to cure cancer or whatever, but you can see that they put 2 and 2 together quite well. Now he knows the difference between certain things, and he knows what's dangerous and what's hot, and he's not just rolling around aimlessly anymore.
Yeah, very cool, Spencer. Yeah, my oldest is 13. Mine are 13, 12, 9, and 5 at the moment. And I can only tell you, it's gotten better each and every year with each one of them. So it's only great things to come here. And listen, since it's the hottest topic in the world right now, the coronavirus here has obviously made us all stay home. In the States here, we're pretty much on a lockdown. What is it like over there in the UK? And your wife being pregnant, is she at any more risk, have they said? Are you guys quarantined over there? How are you guys managing through this whole thing?
They have put pregnant ladies in the same kind of vulnerable group as elderly people and people with pre-existing health conditions. They say that there's no evidence so far to substantiate that the pregnant ladies would be more susceptible to the coronavirus or would be endangering their unborn children. But I think my 2 cents on it is, and this is something I've been following the news an awful lot, and obviously it's affecting business, so I'm really kind of across and on top of the coronavirus. I feel that obviously the NHS is incredibly burdened at the moment. Every bed is taken. There's a lot of there's a lack of ventilators. So I personally believe that were pregnant ladies to descend as well as old people into the hospitals in the NHS, it would be an enormous burden. However, it's a very British thing, and I'm sure a thing all over the world, to look after women and children first. So obviously, one would always put women and children in a high risk category as far as I'm concerned. However, thankfully, there seems to be no evidence to substantiate that they are any more at risk.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. And yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, this thing has completely reshaped all of our lives in a matter of, it seems like, just minutes here. Everything has been kind of turned upside down. I want to get to your clean liquor company here because, as I stated before we were talking this, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Alcohol has played a devastating role in my life and that of my family's. And we talk about deaths in the United States. There are 88,000 alcohol-related deaths every year in the United States, yet alcohol always seems to be promoted in such a positive light. We always see the commercials. It sponsors the biggest sporting events in the world. So what was the genesis of the Clean Liquor Company, and what is it all about?
Well, coming from a similar place to you, I suppose, I wouldn't say... And it's not for fear of calling myself an alcoholic. I honestly don't mind what people think of my drinking habits. I found... For me, the alcohol played a very regular part in my life, especially in my late teens and throughout my 20s, to the point where I wouldn't say it was devastating. Like, I had a lot of fun, but I was very unproductive. I had a lazy streak to me. I wasn't a nasty kind of guy, but I just didn't. I would blame others for my shortcomings, and I would have an air of arrogance to me that if something didn't go my way, it was just, it was the world, or it wasn't my fault. I wouldn't take any responsibility for my own actions. I would make mistakes. I would be unproductive. I wouldn't care to learn. I wouldn't read interesting books. I wouldn't talk to interesting businessmen. I just wouldn't care. And for me, it began to really play on my mind that I really wasn't going to be this successful person that I thought I could become. My whole life, I've spent time thinking, oh, one day I'll be this and I'll be that, and I can do this and I can do that. And when I kind of turned 30 and I was, drunk for the better part of a week, I would begin to think, actually, none of that stuff is going to happen. And I'm never going to settle down with anyone who's going to take me seriously. And respect was kind of slipping through my fingers. I I would have conversations with good people who I really respect, and I would see them see me in a different category, in a different light. And that just really turned me on and fired me up to try and make some positive changes in my life. And for me, it was just a kind of, I was a city trader. You drink every day after work. I ran nightclubs. You drink every night at work. I filmed an awful lot of television. In downtime, you have a few drinks because you're not filming. It was, and I'm not blaming, the places I grew up in or the jobs that I've done. It's just I would find myself finding it extremely normal, to the point where I might even have relied on that drink to go out or to have fun, in inverted commas. And I personally just don't think the two go together. And especially now, everybody is looking at it slightly differently. Like, there was a time when it was quite cool to be out all night long, and being the loudest and the funniest and almost the most drunk was kind of very socially accepted as, oh, that guy's good fun. Whereas now there seems to be they're really changing times, and people look at it differently. I would go so far as to say it's decidedly uncool to be drunk in public now, which certainly wasn't the case a few years ago. So the Clean Liquor Company basically aims to give you all of that ritual and experience of drinking an alcoholic drink without the negative effects of the alcohol. So you have, our gin is 4 times distilled with 10 times the botanicals a Gordon's would have, for example. So it's really fragrant, really potent, but it has 1.2% alcohol. And I understand, and I'd be very interested to get your view, actually, as a self-confessed recovering alcoholic, whether or not you would touch the product. I see it here as the market for moderation is far larger than the market for abstinence, for example. We're not a sober brand. We're a moderation brand whereby you can drink this all night long and not get drunk. I would need about 150 clean gin and tonics to feel the actual effect of the alcohol. I'm sure for some people it's more and for some people it's less. But our point is, you can consume 2 full bottles of gin and still drive a car. So that's the kind of points behind it. For me, sobriety is not being drunk. And that doesn't mean to say that I'm going to go out and have 2 beers and, then stop. Like, that doesn't work for me. So for me, I need to know that if I'm drinking something, I can drink, a few of them, and it's not going to have any effect on my mental state of mind or behavior, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest with you, Spencer, with that. I mean, I'll do, like, when I'm out with my wife and we're going to a restaurant, I'll have a non-alcoholic beer. It'll be something like either an Old Duels we have over here or like a Gloucester Hall or something like that. So I'm not sure if it would be similar to something like that where I would try it. But I'm very careful with myself just because, like I said, it's led me down some very, bad paths in my life. And I drive Uber on the weekends. And one of the most encouraging things about this generation of kids, especially the college age kids, is that they're not drinking and driving. They're taking Uber, they're taking Lyft. But on the other hand, I think that gives them the okay and that freedom to really get themselves plastered at night too, because I see some real horror shows at night from this. But I think, a product like this, if you're not drinking it to enjoy and socially go out and drink, and you're drinking these high levels of alcohol drinks, the only purpose would be to get bombed and to get annihilated. And I think your product here serves the purpose of being able to what they call social drinking.
And we're not suggesting that, drinking alcohol is not cool or whatever. It's the hard liquor as it comes in its natural form is incredibly strong. This is what people kind of, and just because it's been around for thousands of years doesn't make it right. If my wife had 3 regular strength gin and tonics, she's going to know about it. She'll be drunk, and the following morning she'll have a headache, and, her anxiety will kick in or whatever. I'm very fortunate that my mental health has always been pretty strong, but I feel like alcohol doesn't need to be the way alcohol is now. That doesn't mean to say that alcohol doesn't need it has to be alcohol free either, but I think there's a really big opportunity to serve drinks that aren't as strong as proper drinks, unless you're going out with the expressed intent on turning yourself inside out and upside down. I won't suggest quicker ways to do that, but you don't need to be buying nice drinks at a bar to do that. It's just, for me, I want the social experience of going out, interacting with people, having fun, keeping a clear mind, knowing what I'm doing, but also having the barman shake me up something really cool that's not full of sugar, that's not full of calories, and that tastes like a gin and tonic or a rum and coke, and I can sip away at it, feeling a part of what's going on around me, knowing that it's not having an effect on my sobriety.
Yeah, I love the premise of the company, Spencer, and I'm very happy to see that it's doing well and that you're continuing to push it. I hope we get more companies that start to kind of follow suit with what you're doing here. I think it would have a positive impact on our entire society. So props to you for that. Let me rein this back into you here as a dad. I've seen you throw up some pictures there of reading with your son. What is the bedtime routine like with your son here? Are you a book reader? Are you a storyteller? Are you a lullaby guy? How are you getting him down to bed at night?
We like a bit of all of that, mate. We invent songs, we sing. I find that being creative with your kids is really good fun, and it's kind of essential. It presumably opens their mind up to being a bit more creative themselves, perhaps. We read all sorts of famous books, the Tank Engine stuff, and anything we've got our hands on, basically the Gruffalo and all little bits and bobs. But he's great. Typically, we'll read him a story. He loves Peppa Pig. He loves the Teletubbies. He wasn't really into kind of TV, and we had that air about us. We were like, our kid doesn't even like TV. And now, now when he does watch TV, we're delighted because it gives us some time off. But he's a brilliant kid. He's struggling slightly with his sleep at the moment. There was a time when we'd put him down and he'd just go straight to sleep, no problem. Now he'll have a good old whinge for a while. I think it's because he loves his mum so much.
What are some of the biggest values you're hoping to instill in your son and your coming daughter?
I think that hard work is important. I know it's a kind of obvious one, but when you look at some people who have success or they've made success for themselves, and they're incredibly wealthy or whatever, they miss some, and this is a generalization, but some people just don't instill it in their kids, and they parade around and do all these beautiful things and stuff, and the kid takes it for granted, and that's a real problem, I think, in society, is when kids don't understand the value of hard work. So you need to understand the value of a pound, and how far money goes. I myself didn't understand the value of money. I knew what to ask, what I would get away with and what I wouldn't get away with. We grew up in a beautiful house in the English countryside. But as a kid, that's just home. You don't necessarily link the dots to, my family is wealthy, because you don't know what wealth is. So as a kid, I would look at a toy that was, say, £20, like £25, and I would really want it, and I'd say, "Oh, can I have that?" And I'd be told, "You can't have it till it's your birthday or Christmas." And I can remember, and £25 is £25. But at the time, you're like, "Oh, okay," and you take it all on board, and it was a real long time, actually, until I started to really open my mind to kind of what's like how the world works in terms of money and stuff. So I think my parents did quite a good job at a young age of living within your means and stuff like that. But I think it's important, but also just to be kind, to be considerate, to be generous without having people take advantage of you, and just to be happy and good fun. I think a good sense of humor will get you through most things.
Yeah, very well said, Spencer. And you mentioned, The Bachelor is very big over here in the U.S. I've had several of the Bachelor and Bachelorette winners, I guess you want to call them, on the podcast here. What was that experience like for you? And at what age would you feel comfortable allowing your kids to actually watch the show?
Oh God, honestly, it's so funny because I kind of put sober me and past me as different people. Like I've said quite recently that I don't think I'd be friends with myself 2 years ago. Like, I've unlocked an area of my mind that I didn't have before, and I've developed not a hatred, but I've developed this rather low opinion of myself before, and I realize that sounds a bit sanctimonious, but The Bachelor, I was a kid when I did The Bachelor. I think I was 22 years old. And I was, at the time, even though I was this big character on Made in Chelsea, The Bachelor, I was the only guy there. There's 26 girls, I think, or 24 girls. One didn't make it to the airport, so there's 24 girls. And I can remember thinking, I just really hope they like me, because it's weird, because you're sat there and you're like, they're literally being forced to try and win this and fall in love with me, I suppose. So it's not like they have options. So I can remember I was sat there thinking like, well, if they don't fancy me, then the show's kind of over, and then they'll pretend to fancy me, and it's like, so I suppose my head's not as big as perhaps people think it is. I can remember on that night thinking like, I wouldn't expect any of them to fancy me. Do you know what I mean? So it was kind of weird. But it was great. And I remember thinking, my mother's going to watch this show, so I'm going to be a gentleman and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, they keep you so separate on those shows. I've never seen anything like it. Like, you weren't actually able to have a conversation off camera, let alone spend any intimate time with anyone. Like, it just doesn't happen at all. You're kept completely separate. So I don't know. It was kind of like an 8-week holiday. It was very nice, actually. As far as jobs go when you're 22, I'd put it up there.
Yeah, very good. I would imagine it was an awesome experience one way or the other, Spencer, and it's good memories to have. But I agree with you there, and I relate to what you're saying as far as drunk myself and sober self. I've definitely unlocked parts of my soul that I didn't even know existed, and I do look back on some of the things that I've done and kind of been like, who was that person? And I'm glad that I'm not who he was. So, I mean, I could definitely relate to what you were saying there. And what about as far as, I know he's only 18 months old here, what type of disciplinarian have you been so far? Are you a spanker, a timeout guy? How you kind of handling him there?
We give him timeouts. I think we kind of try and, like, it's hard because he's so cute, and it's like, and it's difficult because, like, when you give them a timeout or put them outside the room and you shut the door, like, they get genuinely, like, really upset, but actually it works really well. I'd say my wife has more of an iron fist than I do. Where I kind of just, is it wrong? I find him really cute when he cries, unless he's being really annoying. But, when his big fat cheeks puff up all red and, he's got these streaming little tears coming down his face, I think it's quite cute. So I feel inclined to, like, pick him up and grab him. But no, he's, I think he gets, we're pretty fair with him. If he's being, like, absurd or he has to be carried everywhere and he's throwing a hissy fit, because he can't have what he wants, then he'll be punished, is the wrong word because he's kind of too young, but he'll be, he'll know that we're not happy with him. Put it that way.
Yeah, well said. And what kind of?
He's a bit young to the old spank. Did you ask if I was a spanker?
Right. Yeah.
He's a bit young to the old spanking, I think. But but I was spanked. I was spanked for sure. That was when you crossed the line. It was scary stuff. That I didn't enjoy it, I have to say. So we'll have to see. I don't know what's kind of socially acceptable nowadays. You'll get a call from child services.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people relate to, is that I was the same boat. I think we all kind of grew up with a different, my father was 50 years old when he had me, so he came from 1930. He came from a completely different world of discipline. So what his style would definitely be considered unacceptable today. So it's kind of, I don't know, there's some benefits and some downfalls to all of it. So, I mean, I think each kid needs to be handled and disciplined. I find that way with my four. Each one responds to different styles of discipline, for sure.
I think it's very important. I think discipline is extremely important, though. Like you cannot let kids just run wild doing whatever they want, and you see that a lot as well. Like when you're out and about, people just have no control of their kids, zero. And it's like kids are screaming at their parents and swearing at their parents in some cases, and it's just like, no. Like, past a certain age, unless the child understands full-on hierarchy in the house, you're going to have your hands full.
Yeah, and a lot of that, Spencer, too, here in the United States. I'm not sure what the stats are over in the UK, but here we have got a terrible fatherless crisis in our country. Way too many kids are growing up without a father in the household. So that has a devastating effect on our society as well. I'm not too sure about how the stats are over there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell you, mate. I'm not sure.
Well, you know what? What kind of plans or goals do you have here for yourself in the future, Spencer? You've had so much success already at such a young age. What kind of goals do you have here for yourself?
I'm really focusing on the Clean Liquor Company. I believe it can be a really big thing. Lightspeed Venture Partners were kind enough to lead our round, our first of our opening round, and they have big plans for us, and we have big plans for our own future. The team is building. Obviously, with the coronavirus, it's really, we're having to pump the brakes on a lot of marketing spend. On trade, we've got rid of our on trade team. we're having to kind of rejiggle stuff. We're very much hoping that our relationships with retailers are gonna stay strong, and that people are going to continue going to retailers, even though it's a big ask. Obviously, we're going to try and drive people direct to consumer a lot more. I realize your question was kind of a bit vaguer than that. I don't know. I really want the Clean Liquor Company to grow into a global brand that I know it can be. I believe that the world needs it, and I believe that the world will love it. So we hope to see you stateside very soon, my friend.
Yeah, I'm going to include a link in the description of this podcast episode right to the Clean Liquor Company, so my listeners can tap the link, get over there and check it out. Last thing I want to hit you with here, Spencer, I'd love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast here. You're a fairly new dad here, so I'm curious to hear your answer. What kind of advice do you have for the new dad or for that about-to-be father who's out there listening?
Oh, I think, you've got to stay excited. Don't be frightened by it. Don't let it control you. Ultimately, it's the babies, and you will know what's best for your family and your children. I often find that people who give loads of advice like it's gospel when it comes to parenting is just, most of the time people do things differently. So find your own feet, do whatever works for you. You'll be delighted either way, even if it is tough at the beginning. There's always light on the other side, and any father who has children, so any father will tell you that it's fantastic and wonderful, and and it's certainly something to look forward to. So be happy.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Spencer Matthews, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time on First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you very much, mate. Cheers.